I pulled up in front of my parents' house in Boulder, the driveway already lined with shiny SUVs and polite luxury sedans. The lawn was manicured, the house freshly pressure-washed. Kaluna always made sure everything was Instagram ready. I stepped out of my decade-old Camry, clutching a wrapped photo book and a signed first edition I'd hunted for weeks to find. Inside, the house buzzed with voices and clinking glasses. My mother's voice floated above the others. Kaluna always knows how to plan the perfect surprise. No one turned when I entered. I made my way through familiar faces, nodded to cousins I hadn't seen since last Thanksgiving, smiled at a neighbor who once asked if I was adopted. Aunt Cora waved me over. "Oleta, there you are. They didn't tell me you'd be coming." I smiled. Neither did they. My seat wasn't at the main table. It never was. A folding chair was wedged between a side buffet and the coat rack. I tucked my gift beside it, already feeling the weight of invisibility settle on my shoulders. The clinking of a spoon against a wine glass hushed the room. Dad stood near the back patio doors, arm extended with a dramatic grin. "Everyone, gather by the driveway. We have a little surprise for our rising star." We shuffled outside, chilled by the early September breeze. Parked at the edge of the lawn was a brand new white Tesla Model Y, shining under string lights, topped with a red bow so large it looked cartoonish. Kaluna gasped and clutched her chest. "You didn't." "Oh, but we did," Dad laughed. "Our daughter deserves the best for launching her design line. She's an inspiration." People clapped. Photos were taken. Mom dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Kaluna turned to pose with her new car, flipping her hair and holding up the key fob like it was a trophy. I clapped too, out of instinct, out of habit. When we returned inside, Mom handed me a small envelope with my name scribbled in gold pen. I opened it, cautiously. 3 $1 bills. "For coffee on your drive back," she said cheerfully. "I know you love that little stop along the interstate." I stared at the bills, then back at her. "Thank you," I managed. "You know, you're always so practical. We figured you wouldn't want anything big cluttering your space." I thought about the times I'd covered Kaluna's rent behind the scenes, paid their overdue utility bill, lent money I never asked back for. But sure, I was the practical one. Later, I walked down the hall to put my coat away. And there it was, a newly framed photo hanging near the staircase. Kaluna in cap and gown, flanked by both parents, smiling like a Macy's catalog family. I stared at it. I graduated magna cum laude. My ceremony was 6 years before hers. They didn't attend, said there was a conflict with a family wedding I wasn't invited to. I mailed them the DVD. No one mentioned it again. Behind me, someone muttered, "Kaluna was always the brainy one." I turned. Cousin Dana, sipping white wine, staring straight at the photo. "Yeah," I said. "Always." I turned to look for my diploma. I'd mailed it to them when I moved to Seattle, with a note that read, "Thought this would look nice in Dad's study." It wasn't there. Probably boxed in the garage, under old Christmas lights. I slipped into the bathroom, needing air. The mirror reflected a face too composed, too still. "This isn't new," I whispered. I remembered the 5th grade science fair. My trophy disappeared a week later. Dad said it was taking up space. Kaluna's finger painting, however, lived on the fridge until it yellowed. "They think I don't need applause," I said aloud. "They call it being strong." It's strange when a pattern finally clicks. When you realize it was never about that one moment, but about all of them. Stacked, muted, rewritten. Back in the dining room, I took my seat. The main toast was already underway. "To Kaluna," Dad lifted his glass, "for turning talent into a brand. To our artist who sees the world in color," Mom added, voice shaky with pride. No mention of me. I tried to contribute, said something about a structural redesign I led in downtown Denver. "Oh," someone interrupted. "Kaluna's podcast airs next week. Did everyone subscribe yet?" I sat back. My phone buzzed. A message from Thessaly. "Surviving?" I typed back, turning invisible again. Kaluna raised her glass and smirked. "Maybe Oleta can design me a garage for the Tesla." Laughter. I smiled. Tight, non-committal. After cake, I stepped out onto the porch. The evening was quiet now, the air heavier. I looked at the Tesla again, its sleek body catching porch light like a showroom ad. My reflection bent across the side panel. That car, I said softly, costs more than everything they've given me emotionally in 3 decades. My phone buzzed again. You okay? I stared at the screen, then typed slowly. This isn't just about today, it's about everything they never saw. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out the envelope, and held the $3 up to the light. That's all I'm worth to them, I whispered. I didn't cry. That part of me had already dried out. I folded the bills carefully, placed them back in the card, and reached for my car keys without a word. I didn't speak when I left the house. No goodbyes, no thanks for dinner, not even a forced smile. I just nodded, collected my things, and slipped out the side door like I had done too many times before. The Camry's engine turned over quietly, like it knew better than to draw attention. The moment I pulled onto the main road, the silence pressed into my chest. The kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, but loaded. I turned on the radio out of reflex and immediately regretted it. A sleek voice advertised the latest Tesla models with 0 down and 2.9% financing for forward-thinking families. I turned it off. They didn't even ask how the traffic was. That thought spiraled, unraveling other memories I hadn't intended to dig up tonight. Fixing the leaky sink in their kitchen when the plumber never showed. Setting up their Medicare portal when they couldn't figure out all that password stuff. Researching insurance policies after Dad's minor stroke. Calling providers, comparing deductibles. You've always been the capable one, Oleta. They said it like a compliment. But when did it start to feel like a sentence? Back at the hotel, I kicked off my shoes and sat on the edge of the bed. My jaw ached from holding back words all evening. My shoulders were tight. No tears. Just that pressure, like holding your breath for hours without realizing it. The card was still in my purse. I pulled it out, laid it flat on the nightstand. 3 crisp $1 bills, taped inside with care, but no thought. Underneath, Mom's handwriting. We're proud of you too, just not as good at showing it. Love, Mom, Dad. 2. That word sat there like a pebble in my shoe. So they were proud of me too, huh? I traced the edge of the envelope with my finger. Last year for Mother's Day, I'd ordered a sterling silver bracelet Mom had pointed at in a boutique window, on a day she didn't know I was watching. I saved for it. Not a word of thanks. Later, she bragged to everyone about how Kaluna always gives such thoughtful gifts. Funny. The receipt had my name on it. I stood up and unzipped my suitcase, not looking for anything in particular, just needing movement. Tucked between folded clothes, I found last year's birthday card. Kaluna got a $500 Sephora gift card to help her enhance her image. Mine? A reusable grocery tote with the family's last name stitched in red. Brand loyalty, I muttered. Every gift they gave me had a function. Coffee money, bags to carry things. Practical items, they'd say, useful. Everything Kaluna received was designed for display. Expressive. Fun. Her style. They labeled me without ever asking. Reliable, independent, unbothered. That was the real trap. The more I held things together, the less they noticed I was holding anything at all. My phone buzzed. A notification. An email from Judith, my old engineering professor. Saw your latest bridge design in the trades. Gorgeous and efficient. Hope they're giving you credit where it's due. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I read her message. Judith. She had always seen me, not just my grades, but the way I thought, the way I built. I didn't reply right away. I just sat there staring at the screen. A voice came back to me, something she once said during office hours, back when I still thought hard work earned loyalty. Some people were raised to think being quiet is virtuous, but silence doesn't always mean strength. Sometimes it just lets others tell your story for you. I blinked. What if everything I thought was resilience was actually just adaptation? I folded the email and the thought and placed them in the mental box I'd been building without realizing. Then, I pulled out one more item from the suitcase, the stack of birthday cards I'd saved. I flipped through them. Another year, Kaluna got a designer watch. Mine? A book on budgeting and a post-it that said, "You always manage so well." Manage, that word again. I was their contingency plan, the safety net, the the one who could handle being underappreciated because I'd proven I wouldn't break. But tonight, I wasn't so sure that wasn't already happening, just quietly. I started typing a text to my father. I know I'm capable, but that doesn't mean I deserve less. I stared at the screen, then deleted it. Instead, I messaged Thessaly. I think I'm done trying to earn what should have been given. She responded instantly. That's not giving up. That's recognizing your worth. I leaned back against the headboard, phone resting on my stomach, the card still open beside me on the lamplit nightstand. This time, I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I didn't overthink. I closed my eyes, not with grief, but with something else. Clarity. Not the kind that burns through you like revelation. The kind that settles, like a stone finally dropped in the right place. I wasn't born to be their example of self-sufficiency, their emotional insurance policy, their backstage crew. I was a whole person, not a utility. The hotel curtains didn't block the morning light, but I barely noticed. I sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from my face, not because I'd cried, but because I was tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. That bone-deep exhaustion, the kind you don't even know you've been carrying until you stop long enough to feel its full weight. My phone was face down on the nightstand. No missed calls, no texts. I flipped it over, and there it was, a reminder to send the final sketches for the Jefferson Bridge project. I'd forgotten. Or maybe I'd intentionally ignored it. Hard to tell. I brewed the in-room coffee, which tasted like cardboard and regret, and scrolled through Instagram to distract myself. The first post on my feed was Kaluna. Of course. There she was, standing next to the Tesla, hand on hip, smile wide. The caption read, "Dreams manifest when you believe in magic." Over 8,000 likes, heart emojis, fire emojis. Words like queen and icon thrown around by people who knew nothing about the girl behind that bow. One comment stopped me cold, from Mom. "You've always made us proud." Proud. That word again. Of what? They say that to the one who never built anything that didn't collapse under a camera flash. I stared at the post for a long time. Then, like opening a wound that never closed, a memory bubbled up. I was 16 when I wrote The Bridge Between Us. It was an essay about Grandpa Silas, about the way he used to sketch buildings with me after Sunday dinner, about the quiet ways he made me feel seen. I poured every ounce of truth I had into those pages. It won a national teen essay competition. They printed it in a little booklet I kept in my bookshelf for years. Still do. Kaluna was 21 when she took that story, tweaked it, added some fluff about intergenerational creativity, and posted it to her blog. She didn't credit me, not once, just reframed it. The blog post went viral. A publisher reached out, said they'd love to turn it into a memoir in pieces. I remember sitting on my couch, laptop balanced on my knees, reading her version line by line, knowing exactly which parts were mine. Word for word in some places. I showed it to Mom. Her response? "It's all in the family. Let it go." Let it go. That moment? That was the real theft. Not the story, but the right to be angry about losing it. 2 years later, during a family dinner, Aunt Melanie brought it up. Kaluna's essay was so moving. I cried reading it. I remember the fork halfway to my mouth, my fingers frozen. Dad raised his glass. "She's our storyteller. She gives this family a voice." A voice? What does that make me? The silent one in the background? The stenographer they use when it's convenient? In our family, stories weren't memories. They were currency. Whoever told the story best didn't just win the attention. They rewrote the facts. I didn't say a word that night, just smiled and nodded. Like always. Graduation was another erasure. Magna cum laude, civil engineering. I'd worked while taking full course loads. I invited them, twice. Sent details, booked a hotel room for them. They didn't come. "There's a conflict," Mom said. Later, I mailed them the DVD recording of the ceremony. Months passed. Eventually, she called. "We watched it during Kaluna's art show prep." What timing? Timing. No one ever watched me. They watched around me, through me, past me. They weren't cruel, just tuned to a frequency that didn't include my voice. After finishing my coffee, I opened my laptop and clicked into a folder labeled Proof. Inside were screenshots of the essay, including the original file with metadata. I had the time-stamped Word doc, the email from my high school English teacher, the official award notification. There were photos, too. My science fair from 5th grade, before the trophy got thrown out to make room for holiday storage, a scan of the scholarship letter from the University of Michigan. A blurry shot of me holding my first internship badge, smiling in a hard hat. I'd kept them not to prove anything to others, but to myself. Because one day, I knew, if I wasn't careful, I'd start believing their version of who I was. If you're not the one telling your story, Judith once told me, someone else will, and they'll do it badly. She wasn't wrong. I opened a blank document. The cost of being the strong one. I didn't type quickly. There was no rush. It wasn't a blog post. It wasn't a letter. It was just me, reclaiming what they'd erased. I wasn't jealous of Kaluna, I wrote. I was erased by her. The words hit the page with quiet precision. No anger, just fact. I kept writing, not to lash out, but to remember, cleanly, clearly, truthfully. I paused and looked at the blinking cursor. My hand hovered over the keyboard, not with hesitation, but with the calm of someone finally stepping into a room they'd been shut out of for too long. And this time, I'd write it where the ink doesn't smudge when someone else touches it. It was the buzz of a notification that woke me, not the sun. I had left the hotel curtains drawn shut, wanting to cocoon myself from the world just one more morning. I rolled over and glanced at the screen. It wasn't Thessaly. It wasn't Judith. It was from the digital property service I'd set up for my parents years ago when they refused to touch anything tech-related. I blinked at the subject line. Property ownership update, Harvin Cabin, Vermont. I sat up, clicked. There it was. A new deed. Effective immediately. Ownership transferred from Lowell Harvin Oleta Relan to Lowell Harvin Kaluna Vexley. No call, no explanation, no courtesy, just my name. Vanished. I scrolled back through old folders, emails I'd archived, designs I'd submitted, the original layout I created for the renovation, the insulation plan, the fireplace configuration, the custom loft I drafted for storage. I remembered the PTO days I took from the firm to drive up there. The hours I spent on the phone with contractors trying to keep them from cutting corners. The night I slept in the unfinished attic with a flashlight so I could paint the rafters by morning. And now I didn't exist on paper. Not out of anger, out of convenience. I stared at the PDF for another minute, then closed my laptop. My first impulse was to call Dad, to scream, to ask, "Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" But I didn't. I sat still, my jaw tight, teeth clenched. Instead of dialing, I opened my archived inbox again, searched for the old email thread from 2 years ago, subject line, cabin layout, final review. His words jumped off the screen. "Thank God you handled this. You saved us from overspending on some flaky mountain artist who quoted triple the budget. This is why we trust you." Trust. They trusted me to do the work, not to be remembered for it. A memory surfaced, 6 months ago, last visit to the cabin. I hadn't planned to stay, just dropped off a box of solar lanterns they needed before the next storm. When I stepped inside, I saw it. A large framed photo, front and center above the fireplace. The whole family smiling in front of the cabin's hearth. But I wasn't in it. "Where's this from?" I'd asked. Mom barely glanced up from her crossword. "Oh, you must not have made it that weekend." I had. I was the one who drove them there. I'd made the stew. I'd built the firewood rack they were standing in front of. No one corrected her. No one blinked. Just a new photo, a new story, a new truth. And the old photo, the one that did include me, gone. I hadn't thought about it much then. I thought, naively, that it was a mistake, that maybe they just picked the better shot, that maybe I'd blinked in the other one. But now I saw it for what it was. Families rewrite stories when the original version makes them uncomfortable. "It's easier to love the version of me that never needed anything," I muttered aloud. I leaned back in the hotel chair and stared at the ceiling. How many other things had they quietly rewritten? James Baldwin once wrote, "People are trapped in history, and history is trapped in them." I never understood that line until now. I wasn't being forgotten. I was being edited, and editing is a choice. I opened my laptop again and went straight to my financial dashboard, pulled up receipts, transfer records, emails showing deposits for the Vermont cabin renovations, under my name, permits issued, sketches attached to my email signature. This cabin wasn't just wood and stone, it was time, energy, pieces of me. I didn't build it to prove anything. I built it to be part of something, to be part of them, even if they never said it. I started to draft a legal notice, the kind that would make Dad's lawyer sweat. But halfway through, I stopped. If I sent it, they'd spin the story. They'd call me bitter, ungrateful, emotional, and maybe I was all those things. Maybe that was the point. But I wasn't petty. This cabin, let it be their monument, their prize for public display, their Instagram-ready inheritance. Let them show it off. It still had my fingerprints, even if they pretended otherwise. I picked up the phone. Not to call Dad, I called Thessaly. She picked up on the second ring. "I was waiting for this," she said softly. I didn't speak at first, just breathed. Then I told her everything. The deed, the photo, the replacement, my own erasure. She didn't interrupt. She didn't rush me. When I finished, there was a pause. Then she said, "You carried the foundation. They polished the windows." I exhaled through my nose. If they want a house without me, they can live in it. I walked to the window, watching traffic roll past the hotel. "But one day," I added, "they'll feel the draft from the part I carried that's now missing." The moment I hung up, my phone buzzed again. A push notification. Kaluna is now live. Legacy through design, the Vermont cabin story. My stomach turned. So it wasn't just erasure, it was repackaging, and I had receipts. 2 days passed, quiet ones. I filled them with things that didn't require much thought. Laundry, client sketches, phone calls I kept short. But I kept coming back to the invitation, sitting unread in my inbox. Subject, Family Zoom Celebration, Kaluna's branding milestone. From Dad. The message beneath was short, rehearsed. "Please join us Thursday night at 7 p.m. sharp. Camera on, dressed to impress. Let's support your sister's next big leap." I almost deleted it. Instead, I texted Thessaly. "Am I a fool for even considering logging in?" "Not a fool," she wrote back. "Just someone still hoping they'll choose you this time. Observe if you must. Speak if you're ready." I waited until the meeting was 10 minutes in before clicking the link. Dozens of little boxes filled the screen, smiling faces, wine glasses raised, applause emojis flying in the chat. Kaluna wore something glittery and sheer, clearly styled for screen. My mother had coordinated her earrings with the table centerpiece behind her. Of course, no one noticed when I joined. I muted myself, turned my camera off, sat in my room with the overhead light off, a notebook in my lap, just listening. Dad cleared his throat. "Let's raise a glass to Kaluna, our visionary. She's not just building a brand, she's building a legacy." Applause again, digital and hollow. Kaluna beamed. "I couldn't do this without the love and inspiration I've had from day one, especially from one very important family member who taught me about showing up, not just in words, but in work." There were knowing looks. Some heads turned toward Mom, but I knew she was talking about me. I clicked to unmute. Dad's voice cut through. "Hold up, Oleta. Kaluna's about to announce something exciting." And just like that, my mic went dark, muted. By him. The host. No one said a word. No one asked, "Wait, didn't she try to say something?" I watched Kaluna continue. "The Vermont project really taught me how to bring aesthetics into identity. It was a family effort, but I led that design with heart." Lies. Layered lies. Not one permit had her name, not one design file, not one receipt. But her face was what people remembered. They always did. I let the video keep playing, but focused on the edges of the screen, my reflection faint in the laptop's black border, invisible, but present, like always. I shut my laptop after the call ended. No one noticed I was gone. Later, I poured a glass of water and stood by the counter, the refrigerator humming behind me. I reached for my phone. The screen lit up, an old photo I'd set as the background months ago. Me and Mom at a brunch spot she liked. I'd sent her a watch that morning, silver, engraved, delivered without a name. I remembered the brunch, the toast, her voice rising above the clinking glasses. Kaluna always knows what suits me. She has taste. Kaluna smiled. She didn't correct her. Neither did I. I opened my laptop again, typed, subject, setting the record straight. I made a list. Watch, me. Cabin, me. Essay, me. Tesla, not earned. I stared at the blinking cursor, then slowly closed the draft. I saved it in a folder titled Clarity. Thessaly called later that night. I saw your face on Zoom when they muted you. I wasn't surprised, I said. But it still stings? Worse. It confirms everything I've tried not to believe. She was quiet for a beat. Then, they want your generosity, not your presence, not your truth. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Then it's time, she added. You stop giving what they never earned. I sat with that for a long time. Let it settle. No rebuttal, no argument. Just a truth that didn't need to be louder, just firmer. I opened my journal, the one I hadn't touched in months, flipped to a clean page. Wrote one sentence. I am not the background music to their spotlight. I closed the book, opened my drawer, pulled out the invoice for the watch, printed the Zoom screenshot where the mic icon turned red under my name, wrote on a yellow sticky note, silence is not the same as consent. I put them all in a plain envelope. No note, no emotion, just facts. Walked outside under the porch light. The air was crisp, dry. Dropped the envelope into the blue mailbox on the corner. Let the lid clang shut. What they do with that box will say more than anything I could have written in an email. The box was delivered. I knew because the return receipt email blinked on my phone at 12:47 a.m., neatly time-stamped like a courtroom exhibit. I didn't open the message. I didn't need to. That envelope, sealed with nothing but restraint and memory, was now sitting in their entryway. It would wait there, just like I always had. I sat alone in my kitchen, half wrapped in the cardigan I wore during the Zoom call. The light above the sink flickered faintly, casting long shadows on the stack of dishes I never got to. My tea had gone cold on the counter. I didn't remember boiling the water. My phone screen stayed dim. No new messages, no calls. Just silence. They'd always treated my discomfort as inconvenience, and that night, they honored the tradition. I moved mechanically, collecting a few papers into a drawer, wiping the condensation from my glass. The clock read 2:58 a.m. I reached for my phone and opened my contacts. My thumb hovered above Dad's name first. Then Mom's, then Kaluna. At exactly 3 a.m. I started blocking them. Dad, block. Mom, block. Kaluna, block. No dramatic speeches, no fireworks, just finality. But before I cut the cord completely, I typed the same message to all three. You had a choice. You chose the image, not the person. Then I hit send, and I hit block. The moment was surgical, and it had to be. I stood in the stillness of my living room, exhaling through tight lungs. The world outside was still dark, not quite ready to shift toward dawn. But I was. I grabbed my duffel bag from the back of the closet, the one I usually reserved for weekend retreats or emergency overnight stays. This time, it wasn't for escape. It was for extraction. My hands moved with purpose. First, my grandfather's old blueprint ruler, the wooden one with the tiny etched initials he carved for me the summer I turned 12. Then, the original print of my essay, The Bridge Between Us, laminated, dated, signed by the contest judge. Next, a photo from my college graduation, me in full cap and gown, standing alone in front of the university archway, no family in the frame. I left behind the invoice for the silver watch, the screenshot from the Zoom call, the cabin deed change notification. I had digital backups. I didn't need more weight in the bag. I reached into the kitchen junk drawer, the one they'd always said was full of pointless clutter. My hand found a sticker book from childhood, pages wrinkled and half-used, smiling sunflowers, crooked hearts. I took it. That too was mine. The front door closed softly behind me. No goodbyes. just the sound of tires crunching over gravel and the hum of my engine pulling into the quiet, wide streets of Boulder. The drive stretched out like a release. No music. Just the rhythm of tires against pavement and the occasional flash of highway signs. I didn't need noise. My thoughts were loud enough. I remembered the first time I drove away, leaving for college alone, no send-off, no packed lunch, no, "We're proud of you." I told myself back then they were just bad with emotion. Now I knew better. Back then, I left hoping they'd notice I was gone. This time, I didn't need them to. By the time I reached the edge of Denver, the sky was softening. A faint blue replaced the pitch black. Lights began flickering on in homes tucked behind gated communities. I turned onto Thessaly's street. She opened the door before I could even knock. Her robe was plaid. Her hair was tied up. She didn't ask why I was there. She just looked at me and said, "Come in." I set my bag down inside the door and took off my shoes slowly. She handed me a mug of tea. "You didn't drink the last one," she said gently. "I didn't need it then. I just needed to feel like I was doing something." "You're doing something now," I nodded. That night, I slept on a real bed. A bed not wrapped in tension. A bed without the shadow of comparison. For the first time in months, I didn't dream about being left out of family photos or having my mic muted mid-sentence. When I woke up, the smell of toast and eggs filled the small apartment. Thessaly was already dressed, reading something on her phone, glasses perched at the tip of her nose. She slid a plate toward me. "There's strength in disappearing on your own terms." I sat down, quiet. "I finally said no," I whispered, without even speaking. She looked up. "And they heard you anyway." Later that morning, I opened my laptop, created a new folder. Title: Receipts They'll Never Own. Inside it, I placed everything. Scanned files, screenshots, audio messages, slide decks, original drafts, the photo of the Tesla with the red bow, Kaluna posing like she earned it. And below it, Mom's comment, "Proud doesn't begin to cover it." The last file I added was a single document, no formatting, just one line. I know what I did. Before I could close the screen, an email pinged. From, unknown sender, subject, "You've gone too far." The ping woke me before the sun had a chance. It was still dark in Thessaly's guest room. The curtains were drawn, and the only light came from the screen of my phone, glowing from the nightstand like it knew something I didn't. Subject line: "You need to see what they're doing." No sender name, just the cold anonymity of an unfiltered truth waiting behind a tap. I opened it. There, attached, was a PDF. Dozens of screenshots, text threads between Kaluna, my parents, and a media consultant. Their tone wasn't panicked. It was composed, strategized. If Oleta pushes back, we'll lean into her being emotionally volatile. Audiences respond better to someone who's just misunderstood than someone who's calculating. We need to preserve Kaluna's public arc. We cannot let this become a sibling feud. She's isolating herself. That gives us narrative advantage. Let's leverage it. One line repeated across 3 different messages. We must control the narrative. I didn't speak. Didn't blink, just read it again. This wasn't misunderstanding. It wasn't bad communication. It wasn't family being careless with feelings. This was strategic. They weren't ignoring me anymore. They were trying to erase me on purpose. Thessaly walked in quietly, coffee already in hand. She didn't say anything at first, just handed me the mug, then glanced at my face. "What is it?" I passed her the phone, her brow furrowed, then her lips pressed into a tight line as she read. "This isn't a family rift," she said. "This is image warfare." I sat down on the edge of the bed. "They've decided I'm dangerous," I whispered. Thessaly looked at me. "No," she corrected. "They're not afraid of what you'll do. They're afraid of what you'll say. You're not dangerous, Oleta. You're truthful." I laughed bitterly. "They used to call me dramatic when I was a kid." For pointing out what was obvious. Because obvious makes people uncomfortable when they've built their lives on pretending. I didn't respond. The silence between us wasn't heavy. It was deliberate, focused. And in that quiet, something shifted. I opened my laptop. Thought I'd distract myself. Instead, I saw it. Kaluna's new LinkedIn post. Conference teaser. How personal storytelling fuels creative branding. The slide deck previewed in her carousel looked eerily familiar. I clicked through. Colors, fonts, titles. The layout wasn't similar to mine. It was mine. Word for word on one slide. A diagram I'd sketched on a napkin in a cafe 6 months ago. I'd only ever shared it in one place, my firm's internal concept proposal. No one else had access. Except me. And Kaluna. I picked up the phone, called Jordan, a junior designer who worked under me. Jordan, weird question. Did anyone from outside the firm ever get access to my deck on brand story overlays? He paused. No, not unless you sent it. I didn't. Silence. Then, I remember Kaluna came to that talk you gave at the panel last spring. She asked a lot of questions afterward, took photos of your sketches on the easel. I swallowed hard. I thanked him. Hung up. Then stared at the screen again. It wasn't just about her stealing my design. It was her being invited to speak about authenticity, with my voice. I opened a new folder on my laptop. Title, Public Defense. One by one, I dragged in the files, timestamps, email threads, presentation drafts, clean, precise, undeniable. Thessaly hovered behind me. You going legal? Not yet, I said. First, I'm going public. She didn't smile. She didn't cheer, just said, good. I opened a draft. Title, Designing While Invisible. The post wasn't angry, it was clear. I included side-by-side slides, my original verses. Kaluna's version. No rants, no accusations, just evidence. I typed, I was told early in my career that I was too structured, too technical. But structure holds up what others stand on. And when structure is stolen, so is stability. Then at the end, credit isn't ego, it's accountability. I didn't announce the post. I scheduled it for 9 a.m. No hashtags, no tags, just the truth. Later that afternoon, I opened my archived emails and found a name I hadn't seen in years. Melissa Tran, a journalist who once interviewed me for a local piece on engineering in community spaces. I forwarded her the stolen slides, the emails, the essay that Kaluna repackaged as her own. Subject line, if they control the narrative, here's mine. 2 hours passed, then her reply landed. This is going to get loud, are you ready? I wasn't just ready, I was finally unwilling to be edited out ever again. The invitation didn't come to me directly. Of course it didn't. A cousin forwarded it. Subject line, join us, live, celebrating Kaluna's contributions to creative entrepreneurship. It was the kind of invite with glossy promo graphics and scripted speaker bios. My parents were listed as guest presenters, sponsors were tagged, a local arts foundation logo floated in the corner. I stared at the screen, then flipped it face down on the table. Thessaly looked up from her book. You okay? They didn't invite me. She raised an eyebrow. Surprised? No, just tired of acting like I'm not. She set her book aside. So, you going? I paused. No, but it's time they see I don't vanish when they shut off the spotlight. I opened my laptop and clicked into the folder I'd named They Forgot Who They're Dealing With. I didn't have to prep much. Everything was already there. At 6:59 p.m., I clicked the live stream link. The intro music played, some breezy instrumental jazz that tried too hard to sound elite. The screen filled with faces, hosts, Kaluna in her signature cream blouse, Dad in a blazer that barely fit anymore, Mom in pearls. The host welcomed everyone. Tonight, we're celebrating a woman redefining creative entrepreneurship in the modern world, Kaluna Vexley. Applause. Kaluna beamed. She began with a polished smile. This journey was never about me alone. I'm here because of the people who saw my light before I ever knew how to shine it. Velda took over next. There are givers in this world who ask for nothing. That's what being a family means. My jaw tensed. She had said those exact words to me once, when I questioned why Kaluna got credit for the cabin renovation I built from the ground up. Then Lowell leaned in. When I was in the hospital with Velda's emergency, Kaluna stepped up, covered the medical bills, took charge. That's what family does. My eyes burned. I had paid $14,000. Kaluna had sent flowers. I clicked Join stream. A second later, my face appeared silently among the panelist boxes. I didn't wait. I shared my screen. Slide 1, hospital invoice, under my name. Slide 2, payment confirmation with timestamps. Slide 3, the original invoice for the silver watch Kaluna claimed to have gifted Mom. Slide 4, blueprints of the Vermont cabin with email chains, my signature, dated. Slide 5, my essay, her repost, and then side-by-side slides, mine, Kaluna's, same formatting, same phrasing, even the same misspelled word. The chat lit up. Wait, is this real? Is this her sister's work? Kaluna stole this? I didn't look at the comments. I didn't need to. I clicked back to my video feed and spoke. I'm not here to be celebrated, I said. I'm here to stop being erased. Then I logged off. The fallout was instant. Thessaly stood behind me, silent. My phone buzzed once, twice, then again and again. Kaluna's voice came faint through the still-running stream. I thought we were just sharing inspiration. Velda's face had gone pale. She dropped her mic. Lowell leaned toward the camera. This isn't the place for family issues. I stared at the screen and whispered, You made it public. I'm just adjusting the lens. I closed the browser. At Thessaly's, I curled up on the couch. She handed me a blanket. I didn't expect applause, I said. You didn't need it, she replied. Sometimes the truth just needs oxygen. I looked down at my hands. My therapist's words came back. It's not betrayal to stop accepting crumbs from people you fed your whole life. I nodded. Justice doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's just clear. That night, as I sat in Thessaly's kitchen, nursing a lukewarm cup of tea, my phone buzzed again. New email. From Uncle Henry. Subject. It was always you, kiddo. I opened it slowly. I remember who paid the hospital. I saw your name on the blueprints. I kept quiet. I won't anymore. Attached was a photo. Me and Grandpa Silas standing in front of the unfinished Vermont cabin. He was pointing to the beams I helped place. I had dirt on my jeans, a pen behind my ear. In the corner, scribbled in his handwriting, the one who builds deserves to be remembered. I stared at it, breath caught in my throat. The truth wasn't just out. It had legs now, and it was walking into places I never could alone. I woke up to my phone buzzing non-stop beside the guest bed at Thessaly's. Sunlight streamed through the blinds like nothing had happened, but something had. My inbox was flooded. Subject lines like, I didn't know. That was brave. Are you okay? From old coworkers, college friends I hadn't spoken to in years, even my high school chemistry teacher, most said the same thing. We had no idea. Some messages were longer, overflowing with support, but a few carried a different tone, measured, pointed. Was this really necessary? Did you have to make it so public? The mix was dizzying. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and tried to slow my breathing. My heart wasn't racing, but something in my chest pulsed with a tension I couldn't label. Thessaly walked in, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. You didn't set fire, she said before I even opened my mouth. You just stopped sweeping the ashes under the rug. I took the mug. It feels bigger than I wanted it to. Because the truth usually is. Later that morning, I opened LinkedIn. My post about the stolen design had been shared over 400 times. Engineers, architects, branding consultants, it had made its rounds. The comments were split. Some offered solidarity. Others called me bitter, overly dramatic, attention-seeking. I didn't respond to any of them. I just clicked like on 2 comments, both from former interns. One wrote, She once told me, design without ethics is just decoration. I never forgot that. The other, I watched her give credit to the janitor who found a typo. That's who she is. In my inbox, a message from a nonprofit. Would you be open to consulting on ethical branding initiatives for public art campaigns? I smiled. I wasn't looking for applause. I just stopped apologizing. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. Thessaly called from the kitchen. Olita, it's for you. A package sat at the door. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting on the label. My mother's. I opened it slowly. Inside, the annual Christmas card. Their usual glossy photo. This year? The whole family standing in front of the Tesla, decked out in matching sweaters, Kaluna in the center. The caption? Proud to stand behind our brightest light. No mention of me, not even a passing line, but inside the card, handwritten in Mom's curly script. We hope you find your way back. Love, Mom, Dad. I stared at it, then walked to the kitchen trash, paused, pulled it back out, took a picture, filed it into the archive, under revisionist traditions. Later that evening, while scrolling through my calendar, a message pinged. A cousin had forwarded the Evite for Aunt Gloria's memorial service. The list of attendees was embedded in the email. I scanned through. Uncles, aunts, cousins, second cousins, even their teenage kids. My name wasn't there. I stared at it for a long time. Thessaly peeked over my shoulder. Let me guess. I nodded. They think exclusion is discipline, she said, deadpan. No, I replied. They confuse boundaries with betrayal. The hurt sat differently this time. It didn't sting, it weighed. But I was getting stronger. I could carry it without crumbling. That night, I opened my journal, the same one where I wrote, Silence is not the same as consent. I flipped to a blank page, wrote, I don't want back in. I want forward out. I paused, then opened a private post on my old blog, typed, To those who've been told they're too much, too cold, too distant, maybe you were just too awake to keep pretending. I hit publish. No tags, no alerts, just presence. I spent the next hour cleaning out my digital calendar, deleted annual reminders, Dad's birthday brunch, Kaluna's product launch, family cabin trip. Each deletion felt like closing a file I no longer needed access to. By nightfall, I sat on the floor of Thessaly's living room with a blank greeting card in my lap. I picked up a pen, wrote, Dear me, I see you, I believe you. I will not abandon you again to be accepted by those who never truly chose you. I sealed the envelope. No stamp, just tucked it into the old Christmas card box I used to store under my bed, the box that used to be full of longing. Now, it held a different kind of truth. The next morning, while making coffee, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. From Dad. I didn't press play. Not right away. Because I already knew. He wasn't calling to say he was sorry. He was calling because they were losing control of the story. And he knew. I now had the pen. Silence doesn't always feel empty. Sometimes, it's heavy, a kind of stillness that chokes the air. That's what it felt like 2 days after the live stream. No calls from my parents, no texts from Kaluna, no we need to talk from anyone. But the absence of noise was its own kind of response. I opened Instagram. Comments on Kaluna's latest post had been turned off. The image, her posing in front of the Tesla again, remained. But the conversation had been shut down. Her most vocal cheerleaders? Missing. Unfollowed. I checked. Thessaly slid her phone across the counter toward me. They're not speaking because they're scrambling. I didn't need to ask what she meant. I knew. Shame doesn't make noise, I said. It slinks. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, assuming it was a client. It wasn't. Oleta. My father's voice. Even through the static, I could hear the careful control in his tone, like he was trying to sound calm. Rehearsed. Hi, I said, flat. I wanted to call. Your mother's blood pressure has been unstable. She's not sleeping. This isn't just some social media drama anymore. I stayed quiet. You've always been the logical one, the mature one. Can't we find a way to de-escalate? I leaned back against the counter. You want me to retract the truth? He paused. I want you to consider the bigger picture, family, consequences. I didn't fabricate anything. I said what was real. Truth, he said, isn't always helpful. That was enough for me. I ended the call. No goodbye. No explanation. Just a click. An hour later, a text popped up from Mom. You've always been so cold, Oleta. Why are you doing this to us? Attached was a photo, her in a hospital bed, looking small, vulnerable, implied guilt, wrapped in a JPEG. I stared at the message, heart unmoved. They hadn't defended me once, not when Kaluna plagiarized my work, not when I was cut from every story they told publicly. But now, suddenly, they needed me to protect them? Guilt has been their currency for decades. I'm bankrupt to it now. I deleted the message. No response. Then I opened the folder labeled Public Defense and attached it in an email to Melissa Tran, the journalist I'd spoken to after the stolen slide deck surfaced. Subject: confirmed. Body: everything's in here. Documents, receipts, timestamps, side-by-sides. That night, the article went live. Headline: Invisible Engineer, one woman's fight against family erasure and creative theft. It wasn't clickbait. It was honest, documented, fair. Quotes from my emails, screenshots of Kaluna's plagiarized slides, references to financial records, professional commentary from branding experts and legal analysts. It didn't read like revenge, it read like the truth. My phone buzzed with a message from my boss. Proud of how you handled that. Let me know when you're ready for leadership. That one I saved. By morning, the ripples had turned into waves. Kaluna's brand lost 2 sponsorships. One issued a public statement about reassessing partnerships based on recent revelations. A quiet message from her lawyer arrived in my inbox. Per your request, all creative materials have been removed from our platforms. Ms. Vexley will no longer be using your designs or associated content. No apology, no regret. But it was acknowledgement. For the first time, the boundary I'd drawn didn't feel like a vague threat or a passive wish. It felt like a wall. Solid. Real. Later that evening, an anonymous email popped up in my inbox. No subject line, just a file attached. I hesitated, then clicked. It was a screen recording. A group chat. Names I recognized. Relatives, cousins, Kaluna, mom, dad. The chat time-stamped from months ago. Velda's message appeared first. Oleda's always been difficult. Let Kaluna shine for once. A reply followed, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. But she's the one keeping us afloat, financially, quietly. She always has. I paused the video. No one had ever said that out loud before. I stared at the screen, at those words, that strange combination of betrayal and truth. Then my hand hovered over the mouse. Forward or delete? The first thing I noticed that morning was the stillness, not the suffocating kind, but the kind that lets you breathe. Sunlight filtered in through the sheer curtains of my small apartment. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was chosen. I watered the 2 plants in the windowsill, checked my inbox, started breakfast. It was just eggs, toast, and black coffee. Nothing fancy. But every item in the kitchen had been picked by me. Nothing borrowed, nothing passed down, no reminders of someone else's taste, no family hand-me-downs disguised as heirlooms. On the wall above my workspace hung a framed quote I'd printed and placed myself. You get to decide what survives you. Underneath it, my blueprints. Mine alone. Not everything they gave me was meant to be kept. By noon, I'd finished the last round of email replies. Most were from strangers, readers of the article, colleagues from firms I'd never worked with but always respected. A few were from women who said they didn't know they were allowed to walk away. Then came the voicemail from Judith. Hey, Oleda, I saw the piece. You've always been too bright for rooms that wanted dimmer bulbs. Coffee's on me next week. Your pick. I'm proud of you. I sat for a long time, phone still pressed to my ear. Judith had seen me years ago, long before I knew how to see myself. Later that afternoon, Thessaly and I met at the cafe on 6th, the same one where she first told me, "You're not invisible. You're just surrounded by people who choose not to look." She slid into the booth across from me, stirring cream into her coffee. "Feeling any different now?" she asked. "Some," I admitted, "but I'm not sure if it's relief or fatigue." She smiled. "You didn't burn bridges, you know. They lit the match. You just stopped fanning the flame." I looked out the window. "It's not about proving anything anymore." "Nope," she said. "It's about making space where you don't have to prove anything at all." "I'm learning," I said slowly, "that being right doesn't mean I have to stay in the fight. She nodded, no need to fill the silence that followed. That night, I opened my journal and began writing a letter I never planned to send. Dear Kaluna, I'm not writing to demand anything, not an apology, not a correction, not a return of what you took. I just want to say, I don't hate you, but I do resent how little you had to do to get everything, and how hard I had to work to be treated like nothing. I'm not asking you to tell the truth, I just needed to stop pretending your lie didn't hurt. I folded the letter and placed it in the box where I kept unsent letters, things I needed to say more for me than for anyone else. Closure doesn't need postage. 2 days later, I drove to the cemetery. Alone. I parked near the far edge, carried a small bouquet of wildflowers and the original blueprint of the Vermont cabin, my version, not the one they used for Kaluna's brand campaign. I knelt at Grandpa Silas's headstone, brushing away a leaf that had settled at the base. I built it right, Grandpa, I said quietly, even if they used it wrong. I placed the flowers down, then the blueprint. Then I sat on the nearby bench. No tears, just quiet. He was the only one who'd ever seen me without needing a headline. And that memory? That couldn't be taken. Later that evening, I was back in my apartment, settling in with a cup of tea when the doorbell rang. Unexpected. I wasn't waiting for anyone. I peeked through the peephole. Kaluna. No phone call, no text, no cameras, just her. Standing there, looking smaller than usual. Not in her polished wrap dresses or staged confidence, just a coat and empty hands. I didn't open the door. I stood behind the wood, breathing steadily, heart calm. And for the first time in our lives, I said nothing. 2 weeks after the livestream fallout, I stood behind a podium that bore my name, not as an add-on, not in parentheses, not introduced as someone's sister. Just Oleta Rilin, structural engineer, speaker. The panel was titled Design and Integrity, hosted by an urban planning institute that hadn't so much as glanced my way a year ago. I'd once fantasized about this moment being a kind of vengeance, vindication dressed in applause. But standing there, holding my talking points, I didn't feel vengeful. I felt grounded. This wasn't a firestorm, it was foundation. I wasn't just reclaiming a seat, I told the audience, I was building the table. No dramatics, no buried knives, just facts and framing. Before stepping out of the green room that morning, a box had been waiting for me at my door. No return address. Inside, the silver watch I'd once bought for my mother, the same one I'd never received credit for. Alongside it, a note. You were right. We should have done better. See, I didn't react. I didn't return it. I just placed the box back on the shelf. Apologies are not redemption, especially the ones that arrive only after consequence. That afternoon, in front of a full room of industry leaders and younger designers watching the live stream online, I gave my talk. I didn't name names, but 2 slides told the story. The first, what was taken. My original work, my words, my blueprints. The second, what I rebuilt. My reputation, my space, my voice. I ended with this. The strongest structures are the ones that didn't collapse under erasure, but used it as foundation. A pause. Then applause. Not thunderous, but steady. Certain. Afterward, a journalist in the crowd asked if I'd be open to doing a TED-style series. A high school STEM coordinator invited me to guest mentor, and someone from my former firm sent a short message. We see you, we should have sooner. Clips from the panel went viral. Not on gossip pages, but in places that mattered. Design blogs, ethics forums, professional networks. Someone quoted me on a viral account. Credit isn't ego, it's accuracy. But it wasn't the shares that stayed with me. It was the private DMs from people who said they'd finally stood up to the colleague who always took credit, to the family that always rewrote the truth. The inbox filled, not with damage, but with dignity. Truth, I thought, sipping tea later that night, it turns out, is contagious. 2 days before Thanksgiving, a cousin sent me a group invite. Family dinner, all the usual names, all the usual performance. I replied politely, thanks, I won't be joining this year. Then I added, I'm grateful this year. for the silence that made room for my voice. Before I could talk myself out of it, I went into my social media accounts and unfollowed every family profile. There was a flicker of hesitation. But then, click. Confirm. Letting go doesn't always sound like a scream. Sometimes it's just a steady breath. That weekend, Thessaly hosted a quiet dinner, just four of us. No toasts, no table centerpieces with printed affirmations, just good food, open conversation, and real warmth. I brought a cake. It was lopsided, slightly overbaked, but it was mine, completely. After dinner, I stepped out onto her balcony. The Denver skyline blinked in the cold night, not asking for my attention, but not turning away from it either. I whispered to myself, just once. They gave her a Tesla with a red bow. I got $3, and a life they'll never own. As I turned to head back inside, the door buzzer rang. None of us were expecting anyone. I paused, walked to the intercom. Delivery for Aleta. I didn't order anything, I said, but sometimes closure doesn't knock. It delivers.